Congress wants to raise the standard for physical fitness, but only for combat arms. The United States Army is yet again being looked at to change the physical fitness standard. In what has become a quarterly event, we are looking at rearranging how we do things with the Army Combat Fitness Test, the new-ish physical fitness assessment for the United States Army. I have it on my calendar now. Quarterly, we need to change the physical fitness test or the standards, and then about every other year we got to change the uniform, right? I got 2 calendars and it's marked. I set aside a little bit of money for the uniform changes because I swear to God I can't go into clothing and sales without spending $170. I do want to say thank you to Tim Kennedy, for giving me the sheepdog shirt. Appreciate the merch. This is not sponsored. Also, since I started wearing the shirt, my grappling is still trash, but at least I look good while I do it. Congress is talking about raising the standards for one specific group, combat arms, on the Army Combat Fitness Test. Senator Tom Cotton is kind of leading the charge on this. He's saying that the minimum standard for the ACFT is too easy. Before we get into that, let's talk about the APFT. The old Army Physical Fitness Assessment was the APFT, the Army Physical Fitness Test. It encompassed 3 events: the 2-minute push-up event, the 2-minute sit-up event, and then the 2-mile run. You had to get a certain number of reps and a certain distance for time during this test. It's widely known and widely believed that it was an extremely poor measure of physical fitness. You're in relatively the same domain of strength for all 3 of those events, and you know, quite frankly, it just doesn't encompass a lot. It leaves a lot out, and it led to cultural issues with physical fitness in the Army, specifically running issues, and that was specifically we would run all the time. PT in the old Army, you know, well, what I call the old Army, because I know some of you were there for the Civil War. How was it watching the Gettysburg Address? PT in the old Army looked like pretty much running every day, and then you'd ruck once a week, okay? If you wanted to hit back and biceps, you would just flex those muscles while you ran 2 miles. That's pretty much it. But now we've had a shift, right? The ACFT encompasses 6 events. I'm probably going to get the order wrong. Please let me know if I do. You have the 3 repetition max deadlift, the standing power throw, the hand release push-up, the sprint drag carry, or as we all refer to it as the Widowmaker, the plank, and the 2-mile run. We just can't get away from that daggone run. Now, you know, we all have our ideas, our opinions on the events of the ACFT. In my opinion, the standing power throw gives way too much advantage to tall people. You got a taller level, a taller starting point, the ball's gonna go further. It's just basic physics. While, you know, the tall people struggle with the plank. I think it actually slows down time while you do it. Every time I start the plank off, I start off strong, and then about 30 seconds into it, I'm having a conversation with God. And it's usually I'll give something, right? I'm never gonna tell a lie again. I'll never tell a lie again if you just help me get through this. My only issue with the sprint drag carry is that every single time I do it, I have to bring an extra pair of shorts. If you don't get that joke, ask your NCO. But getting back to the increase of the standards, it would be added to the National Defense Authorization Act, and Senator Cotton is suggesting maybe we even go back to the old APFT. But at a minimum, he wants to increase baseline standards, but only for combat arms jobs in the Army. This would be things like infantry, like scouts, which are basically infantry, like tankers. Inevitably, when we start talking about standards and physical fitness in this day and age, we start hearing the gender-neutral conversation, and from what I understand right now, there are no talks of making the test gender-neutral. Going back to the fitness culture, though, you used to be able to be a one-trick pony. If you were a string bean that could run fast, you could max out the APFT. I know very few people that can max out the ACFT, to include myself. It takes a significantly physically fit individual to do it, and I think that's a great thing. Getting a 600 on the ACFT is coveted. It is difficult to achieve. And I think that's exactly what we need. The minimum standard, though, is what we're talking about here. And I have to agree that I think some of the minimum standards are a little too easy. I think 40 pounds on a 3-rep max deadlift, I don't think that's enough. Now, what I've been told, the thought process behind that, if you can do 3 repetitions lifting up that weight, that's roughly half the weight of an average soldier in full kit, and that's what you would need to, be able to lift, to pick up a litter and carry it off the battlefield. I have no idea if that is the actual thought process behind the 3 repetition max deadlift, but it sounds good, it briefs well. I think we could, maybe increase the standards on some of these events. But if we're gonna increase the standard for one group of people, you gotta increase it for everybody. I've been an MI soldier, a military intelligence soldier, for almost 12 years. I am firmly a POG. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's a person other than grunt. It's somebody who's not infantry. Okay, I am POG and proud. I am proud of my POGness. That being said, I don't believe I should be held to a different standard than a combat-oriented service member, because in the next fight, what we're training for is LSCO, large-scale combat operations. In large-scale combat operations, the reality that you'll have to conduct long foot marches is very real. Everybody's going to need to be extremely physically fit. And combat arms soldiers should not have to worry if the people to their left and right are capable of cutting the mustard. They should know that they had to do exactly what they did in order to get to war, in order to qualify for war. That's what the physical fitness assessment does. It qualifies you to go to war. And that's why I believe we should all have the same base standard in order to pass the ACFT. Now, again, I do believe that we could do with increasing the standard on some of it. I do think that we could do that. I think we could, maybe even add a 7th event. And that would be having to put the extra bar on the other side of the cot. Honestly, we could probably just do away with the whole test and do that. We could just do that, right? If you can put that bar on the cot, right, then you can go to war. It's fine. I just sleep with my feet dangling, and I'm not tall. That should tell you how short the Dagon cots are. When you start talking about differences in standards, inevitably the conversation will go to different pay as well. The Army already pays certain demographics more depending on what they do. We pay airborne soldiers more to jump out of perfectly good planes and test capabilities we haven't used in 50 years. I think I might have just alienated a large portion of my base. I'm not sorry, and I would say it again. I love you, and I'm a leg. Feel free to let me know. We pay drill sergeants extra just to be angry, and we pay recruiters to lie to people and ruin their lives. I'm just kidding. I've done 12 years in the Army, and I haven't loved every day, but overall it's still good. They've got me, I'm gonna do the 20. But is it too easy? Is it too easy? Well, I'll tell you right now, I think that anybody at all who wants to change the physical fitness standard should have to do the sprint drag carry 3 times in a row. 3 times. You can look up videos online of people doing it just once. And at some point, everybody breaks. The sprint drag carry, I believe, is the ultimate test of service memberhood. I believe that we should force people to take it in order to vote. You want to vote? You got to do this without doing the stanky leg. Standards are a prickly issue, though. Standards are always a prickly issue. And we've changed the standard many times on the ACFT. We wouldn't want to keep it the same because then everybody would know what they need to do. And that wouldn't be good. But the standards for our warfighters are a serious issue. We can't just willy-nilly make changes or implement tests. The ACFT went through extensive testing with a significant number of people who've been operating in that space, the physical fitness space, for a very long time. You had PhDs working on that test and not just one. Significant time, resources have been put into making sure it is an extremely effective assessment of physical fitness. Some of the biggest takeaways from the ACFT have been the idea that it is logistically difficult to execute, and that is true. The ACFT incorporates a bunch of different equipment that you need to use. We can't test people as easily downrange. I will tell you that this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I have a Bachelor of Science in Exercise Science, a BS in Exercise Science. It was a fully online school, so emphasis on the BS. I like to think that I've got some skin in the game here, and I also like to think that I have at least a little credibility because of that. I'm also a certified personal trainer, or I was a couple years ago. I don't know when the certification expires. I've got 3 of them though. Bingo, bango, bongo. Now, I believe that the logistical difficulty of the ACFT isn't really a factor. I believe that it's an error of culture that we test people on their physical fitness when they're already downrange. If you look at professional athletes or Olympic level athletes, they're not testing themselves in season, okay? They're testing themselves either preseason or postseason, right? When they're in season, they're focused on executing. You should already be ready to execute war by the time you get to war. We shouldn't have to assess if people are ready to be there. That we should just know they are ready to be there. And so I think that's another cultural change that has been really positive that's come from the ACFT. Now, of course, I'm a uniformed service member and I'm a commissioned officer. Whatever standard gets put out, I'll execute it. If an order is legal, moral, and ethical, I will execute, and I expect my service members to do the same. But I sincerely hope we do not go back to the APFT. It was a poor assessment of physical fitness, and on top of that, it incorporated the sit-up, which is almost inarguably one of the worst movements somebody can do. It degrades your posture and can lead to significant lower back injuries. And it does this through an unnatural shortening of the hip flexors. And I know everybody who's done that 2-minute sit-up event, going into the run, the hip flexies are tight. They're tight like a toiga. Current Sergeant Major of the Army Weimer, believes that we should stick with it, right? He believes that we can use it to continue to change fitness culture in the Army. And I believe we need to. I believe that changes need to continue to happen. Nobody should be able to be really good at one thing and max out a test. What happens when that occurs is those people inevitably will get preference and promotion. Physical fitness is an incredibly crucial part of being a service member in any branch. But it's even more relevant in the Army because we have to use the fitness. So to say that this topic is important, it's one of the biggest understatements you can make. But what do you all think? Should we change the standard? Should we keep the standard the same? Should we make people put a bar on the end of the cot? Should we just add that event? Should the test be gender neutral? I cannot wait to hear your thoughts.